Welcome back to Politics Tonight. Thank you very much for staying with us on the program. It would seem the last has now been heard on the Gwandu Emirate dispute, given the final verdict by the Supreme Court. In a split decision, the Apex Court upheld Alhaji Muhammad Ilyasu-Bashir as the substantive Emir of Gwandu in the long-standing dispute over the Emirate's throne. According to the court, the deposed Emir of Gwandu, Al-Mustafa Jokolo, did not initiate the suit via due process of law and failed to serve a pre-action notice on the governor of Kebbi State. As a result, the entire proceedings and judgments of both the trial court and court of appeal were set aside. With this, let's now speak with a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Umar Aminu Kalgo, for his own perspective on this latest development. Mr. Kalgo, good evening to you. Thanks a lot for joining us on Politics Tonight. Thank you.
My pleasure, Chimoki. My pleasure to be on the show.
Thank you so much. Now, a legal battle of almost 2 decades has now been brought to an end. Believably so, because the Supreme Court is the apex court of the land, notifying the reinstatement of Haruna Jokolo as the 19th Emir of Gwandu. Now, the conflict has been, the battle over the Gwandu Emirate throne. From your own perspective, historically, what is the background of the Gwandu Emirates dispute? Who are the main parties involved in this dispute, and what are their claims? Let's start from there.
The dispute, as you can see, is a tripartite, dispute, because you have the government of Kebbi State on the one hand, and also the appointed Emir, that is His Royal Highness Muhammad Ilyasu-Bashir, and the dethroned Emir, that is Al-Mustafa Haruna Jokolo. So you can see it is a tripartite action where you have 3 parties in the action. So this is in a nutshell, because you see it is the action of the government in the first place that dethroned the 19th Emir of Gwandu, and in his place appointed Muhammadu Ilyasu-Bashir. So when the aggrieved party approaches the court, he has to join the government and also the appointed Emir in the suit. So it comes to be a 3-way action that was finally now decided by the Supreme Court after almost 20 years.
Mm. Now, from the legal perspective, Mr. Kalgo, because the Apex Court ruled that the Kebbi State High Court had no jurisdiction to entertain the suit filed by Jokolo because he failed to exhaust the internal dispute resolution mechanisms provided under the Kebbi State Chief's law as appointment and deposition law. I want you to talk to us about this internal dispute resolution mechanisms provided under the law and how it would have, ordinarily solved this issue without it getting to the court of law.
The status in Nigeria, just like the Kebbi State Chief's appointment and deposition law, many a times it provides for what is known in law as pre-action, that before going to court, you need to write and inform the authority of your displeasure and your concerns and your grievances. If taking that action may give a way where it can be resolved administratively. And once one has taken that action, then if he is not satisfied or his approach or his pre-action was not answered, then he can move to the court. So in this matter, the Supreme Court had played leverage on that since there is no pre-action notice, in the first place, then the jurisdiction of the trial court is not invoked, because before the jurisdiction of any court can be invoked, all the necessary pre-action notices and everything have to be in place before a court can be seized of jurisdiction to entertain the matter. So that's why that Section 5 sub 4 of the Kebbi State Chiefs appointment and deposition law have provided for such a approach that the governor must be written. And the Supreme Court expanded that section that it involves both the appointment and even if it is dethronement or deposition, then a party who is aggrieved must, comply with that before approaching the courts.
All right. So apart from the issue of jurisdiction and failure to exhaust the internal dispute resolution mechanisms, were there other bases for the Supreme Court's decision to uphold Bashir as Emir of Gwandu?
Mainly, when you have issue of jurisdiction, then the merits is not going to be looked into, particularly if it is the Supreme Court being the last court of the land. If it were a court that is not the penultimate, court, then even if they decide a matter on jurisdiction, they have to go to the merits of the case, because if it rises on appeal, the appellate court will have the opportunity of seeing what is taking decision on the issue of jurisdiction, as well as looking into the merits of the case. But the Supreme Court is the last court. And I want to highlight and bring the quote of Justice Oputa of blessed memory when he quoted the famous American jurist Robert Jackson, who said, while describing the Supreme Court, we are not final because we are infallible, but we are infallible because we are final. And I think this comes to play in this judgment because you can see it is a split judgment. Even the minority of the Supreme Court justices are seeing this matter in the other way because you have a dissenting judgment. But at the end of the day, it is the majority judgment that is the judgment of the courts. And I think this just brings us to the situation here, because 20 years is not a small time.
Absolutely.
And you can, yes.
And I'm sure some Nigerians would be wondering why it took that long for an Emirate dispute to be resolved. But for you, how has the Supreme Court's decision impacted the political and social landscape of the Gwandu Emirate?
Indeed, I would say the purpose of litigation has been achieved, because once there is finality of a dispute, I think the aim of litigation has been achieved, because there must be an end to litigation. You can only imagine these 20 years on either sides, the suspension and the apprehension that is there. Still, whether on the side of the incumbent or the deposed or just the community, everyone is have this lingering in their mind, because the institution is a very critical institution in the fabric of our society, because it embodies religion and culture alike, the predominant culture here. So I would say the course of justice has been served, because it is in public policy that there should be an end to litigation. So this protracted suspension for 20 years, at least by now, we can say it has been laid to rest.
So by this court judgment, Mr. Kalgo, is it okay or is it right to say this would help stabilize the traditional leadership structure, although social and political divisions may still exist among supporters of the rival claimants? But is it okay to say this would help stabilize the traditional leadership structure?
Absolutely, because now, the position is established. Nothing, it has been firmly established. And I think everyone knows that when you have a dispute and it is settled, then one should accept it, especially this is the highest court of the land. And even in the judgment, the Supreme Court has advocated that it should be taken as the will of God. And I believe, looking at the source and the origin of the Emirate, I believe all functions in that would have to adhere to that and take it as the will of God.
But what were the reactions of the key stakeholders and the public to this Supreme Court ruling, to the Supreme Court ruling?
To the best of my knowledge, I have not heard any public statement on either of the sides. I just want to say that as you talk about the situation and how it is, well, in Binin Kebi, I think it was very normal how everything goes. And what happened, originally it was slated for the 6th, that is today. When the Supreme Court realized that the 6th is the Eid al-Adha, it is now then taken back to be delivered on the 4th. So many were not aware. And I want to bring another function. The only thing I think that has tried to call a small distress is just on the, social media platforms, because there were publications that were saying to the contrary that the former Emir has been, reinstated. But all those are fake news. I just raised this to show how such things can be on the social media and they are potentially dangerous. But alhamdulillah, they have not caused any havoc. Quickly, it has been dispelled. News.
But also, what legal arguments did the opposing parties present during this case?
This case, what happened is the trial court, that is the High Court, and the Court of Appeal, in their judgment, they have reinstated the former Emir as the 19th Emir, that is Al-Mustafa Haruna Jokolo, to be reinstated as the Emir of Gwandu, on the basis that the government, they have not taken due process in dethroning him on the issues of following through with all the requirements of the law before an Emir is dethroned or deposed. So that has been the judgment. And the Court of Appeal have 2 consecutive judgments to that end, because initially the appeal was made by the incumbent Emir, that is Muhammad Ilyasu-Bashir. And subsequently, the government too, prosecuted his appeal separately. So you find out 2 judgments consecutive of the Court of Appeal reinstating him. But at the last, the judgment of the Supreme Court have nullified both judgments of the trial court and that of the Court of Appeal. So now the judgment is that Muhammad Ilyasu-Bashir is the substantive Emir of Gwandu, and that all those earlier judgments have been set aside for being ones that were declared without jurisdiction.
All right, Mr. Kalgo, let me put you on hold while we take a break. And when we return, we'll expand this conversation and also talk about other national issues. Please stay with us. Disputes as Supreme Court upholds Ilyasu-Bashir as Emir. And I've been speaking with Emir Kalgo, a lawyer and public affairs analyst. Mr. Kalgo, thanks a lot for staying with us on the program. So I want us to go back memory lane, perhaps to the genesis of this dispute, because Ilyasu-Bashir was installed by the Kebbi State government, but his legitimacy was contested by those who argued that proper selection processes or lineage considerations were not followed. If that is the case, how does the selection process of an emir in Gwandu Emirates traditionally work?
The dispute pertaining to the appointment of His Royal Highness, the Emir of Gwandu, Muhammadu Ilyasu-Bashir, as you are aware, emanated from the dethronement of the former Emir, that is Al-Mustafa Haruna Jokolo. So from the way it emanates, you can see it's not just the natural succession as we know, but all the same, the kingmakers in Kebbi, in the Gwandu Emirates, is established. There are certain traditional title holders that are key in the appointment and selection of the emir. If I may recall, not necessarily existing all of them, the Waziri of Gwandu, Magajingari, and the likes are some of these chieftains that are responsible in the selection of the new emir. But this contention, as you can see, majorly rely on the dethronement, which is being disputed, that the former emir was not deposed by proper due process of law, and that was the contention of the 19th emir of Gwandu while he went to the court. If then his dethronement was not proper, then ultimately the appointment of the 20th is not going to be a legal one. So that is the contention that give rise to the.
And, of course, I know how historically and traditionally embedded this conversation is. And from what you have also said, the Emirates kingmakers typically choose their emir based on lineage, merit, and customary practices. But in addition to everything you said, the selection must also be approved by the state government, blending traditional and modern legal authority. Do you agree with those who have said, from the look of things and the recent Emirate tussle in Sokoto, Kano, it looks like we're beginning to spoil the beauty and heritage of Northern Emirates with politics?
That cannot be, I think it cannot even be overemphasized, really, because you see, I think where in this country we need to get it right is we need to know the bounds of partisan politics, because when we allow it to, descent into the bureaucracy of the civil service or in the chieftaincy affairs, it now becomes a problem. And I want all politicians to be at least to see reason how they react, because by law, the civil service must be loyal to the government of the day. And equally, the emirs and the traditional titles have no option but to be loyal to the government of the day. But in political tussle and partisan at the level of the politicians, whenever you have an opposition winning, it becomes a problem. They will now see that as if the former emir or what have you, or the civil service, or somebody holding an office is being loyal or being partisan to the other politics. I think it is good. It is a good system of democracy that certain sections of society, of our polity and governance, should be insulated from partisan politics, be it the civil service or the traditional system that we have. I think this is what is creating this tension that we see, because if this important functions of the society are infiltrated with this partisan politics, it won't be for the good of the nation, because partisan by its nature, it is a bias that the political party will have, that we are the ones to be better in that. So let them stay with their political strata and do their things. So I think all have to put hands on deck to institute this system.
Absolutely, Mr. Kalgo. And I want us to stay on this because, Nigeria's traditional leaders retain huge influence in many parts of the country. But recent events have made some young people question the role of the monarchy in the 21st century. There have been several instances of traditional rulers being deposed by states and federal government. And there are some agitating and saying there must be, or if provision must be made for the establishment of state councils of traditional rulers as an advisory body in all states of the Federation. How do we go about it? What's your own perspective on this?
I think the Nigerian history bears testimony to the importance of the traditional institution. Though we are operating a republican, constitution, which has nothing to say about the traditional chieftaincy, but right from colonial era, it has been an important aspect of governance in Nigeria, and it has not ceased to be. So with this, I would say it's not out of hand if we sit properly and state clearly what roles the traditional leaders should play. I think it is a good thing that this should become, properly thought out and clear.
So how do we go about it, Mr. Kalgo?
I think it's not, well, to do that, I think if, because, the idea of traditional rulers differ from one part of the country to the other. And that's why you find that now it is just relegated to the states where they have it, though the constitution has not spelled out anything clearly about it. But right from the colonial masters today, there is subvention and money is given to emirate councils. So you can see this goes to tell you that it is something that de facto is telling us that it is necessity, but it is just left like that without anything tangible. That's why it can be manipulated by the politicians always. I think it is time that we sit and I think their role can be given to the chieftains, even if it is a ceremonial one, an advisory one, rightly recognized by the Constitution, which can be fortified that the politicians cannot entangle and mingle with it at their whims at all times. Because these traditional titles have, over time, I mean, fortified the position that culturally they have been a formidable institution, which is highly respected because now they are devoid of all authority, but people by their will are subjecting to that authority. And wherever there is chaos, the government run to them so that they can speak to the masses. So I think it's high time the Constitution comes, pop and plain and have some things stated clearly. I think we can borrow from UK and other places where they have constitutional monarchy, not in a way that it governs because we are very, very heterogeneous, but even at state levels, I think it can do. Now, the Gwandu Emirate that we are talking about is not restricted to just, Kebbi State, if you know, when you look at the history of the Caliphate, the whole of the north, far north, he is the second after the Sultan of Sokoto in terms of hierarchy under the Caliphate system. So this is why you can see a lot of, people have revered that emirate and that position.
All right.
Are concerned what happened there.
All right, Mr. Kalgo, maybe I should ask you a direct question, and I would also expect that you give me a direct answer, because the truth, just like you've pointed out, is Nigeria's constitution has no role for traditional rulers, despite being custodians of both religion and culture. So how do we continue to protect our culture and tradition? How do we insulate the traditional seats from political influences?
On political influence, I think is very clear. I think the same thing that applies to civil service should apply to traditional rulers, because you cannot envisage a sitting government not having an emir or a civil service being loyal to it. And I think that should be respected by all politicians, because at the end of the day, even if they are the opposition, they won, they will want to have that loyalty, which is basic for them to succeed. Pertaining to the role of the monarchy, I think it will take a constitutional amendment, if you like, to have it entrenched, because once you have a republican constitution, it means that it doesn't have any regard for the traditional institution, but just mere of design and the system we have. At times, I remember there was a time when this question was thrown, and many of the traditional rulers are saying, no, just leave us the way we are. But I think, they were once, especially in the North. When you look at the North, they are highly involved in governance in the past, because the NAs then were directly under the traditional institution, the emirs and what have you. So that just coming from indirect rule of the colonial masters, the next thing is you find the emirs and the emirates directly as the heads of NA, like local government of nowadays. So once
but has it helped us, Mr. Kalgo? Because it was important to have this conversation, because it's quite confusing that the British, from whom we copied their style of governance, have monarch over their democracy. But here we've placed democracy over monarchy. Has this really helped us in any way?
I think is no, our traditional title. I mean, that is our identity. Once you lose your identity, you move as a confused individual or society in the fabrics of the world, competing with other, I mean, cultures when you lost yours. That is not of our history and what we are. And they have a role and way of, I mean, the reverence and the respect they have always come to bear when it comes to issue of urging people to behave well and go back to their morals.
Interesting. So before I take you up on other issues, Mr. Kalgo, what significance does the Emirate hold in the broader context of Nigerian traditional institutions and governance?
I think the role is enormous. If you can see, the Sokoto Caliphate is the largest, kingdom or empire when the Europeans come. You are talking about from this west, Kebbi, Niger to Ilorin. When you go far to the eastern end of the northern part of Nigeria, excluding Borno, Gongola, Adamawa, and what have you, extending to Cameroon. And all these previously are under the same kingdom. And even today, they relate. So this can tell you how the interconnection and the synergy. That's why the colonial masters, when they came, look, they now govern through those systems they have, calling it indirect rule. So I think even today, it continues to have relevance. So by this, and even look at each year, now we are just celebrating Eid al-Kabir. The single individual who announces the date that we will observe this single individual is the Sultan of Sokoto for the whole of the Muslim Ummah of Nigeria. I mean, this should not be, taken lightly. So it's a great deal, in trying to govern a society. Whatever they respect is something that one should go. I think democracy and secularism we talk about is not indifferent to that. And that's why when you elect an official, before he take that responsibility, you now swear him to the book of his faith. Because that moral, that, institution is the one that will guide him when there's no one to watch him over.
Interesting. Overall, it's great to see that the Supreme Court has now provided the final legal resolution and effectively ending this legal contestation of his position. Right, so let me take you up on other matters, Mr. Kalgo. National issues now. It's been 2 years since Mr. President assumed office. I want to have your assessment of the president's performance so far.
The performance of Mr. President, I can say what really people are talking about is the economy. The economy is what affects each and every one. And the president have been, is not always, he said he is not unaware of what the people are going through. The issue of removal and the situation of the economy, that these are hard times. But Mr. President continued to tell Nigerians that these hard times are something that we must live to. Personally, I want to say, even if I am not, an advocate of removal of subsidy, I am of the utmost conviction that for Nigeria to emerge, actually we have to have taken painful, resolutions to get ourselves back to what we need to be. Because if you look at our society, we know that we have many ills that we must deal with. Look at insecurity, corruption, and what have you. And these things cannot be cleared, simply. We must feel the effect as we move to clarify these things. My only hope is that I want to see a recommitment to fighting corruption that is very, very strong, at the same time as we bring economic remedies for this country.
But in what ways do you see the president's administration fostering national unity and inclusivity, especially considering the diverse ethnic and religious makeup of Nigeria?
I think the election of 2023 that brought Mr. President is a huge, lesson for the whole of Nigeria to see how, despite all what is said, how Nigerians, ordinary Nigerians, can vote Mr. President losing his very state, but going to win to win some states in the South and in the North, some part of the North. I think that clear democracy have shown you how Nigerians can choose, not regarding person being from their place or other things that we may likely think that as natural affinities that we always follow. So with this, I would say the president have a very strong platform to further unify this country. And politically, I would say Mr. President is very, very successful politically. No understatement about that, because by the way, APC is gaining ground day by day. No one can say that it's not a political success. So I only hope that this political success will give him more courage to have the dividends of democracy reaching the grassroots. Because in Nigeria, for any president to succeed, he must have equally good willing governors that will do what is needful for the ordinary people to have the benefits of democracy in economical terms.
But 64 years down the line, Mr. Kalgo, as an independent nation, Nigeria is still grappling with, challenges of nation building. And I'm sure we've had this conversation before now. How have we fared so far?
We have a long way to go, no doubt about that. But the issue with Nigeria is that Nigeria, I will not say it's a sleeping tiger, it's a sleeping lion. That we need to know. So despite our sleep, our slumber, the whole of the globe is aware in terms of number, in terms of resources, that once we get the click right, we are going to shoot to be a very, very, leading nation because in terms of brain power, everyone knows Nigeria. The Nigerians in diaspora are, clearing and setting, trailing, in many aspects. And when it comes to natural resources, there's abundance of natural resources, not just oil, not just only oil. As now we are moving to solar and the issue of lithium being one of the main important sources of energy. Nigeria have large deposit of this lithium. So I think that's why when Nigeria is thinking of developing itself, it should be very wary, because this world, as we know as individuals, is a competitive world. So a lot of, the competing nations would rather have us stay where we are, sorry to say, but it's a reality. So that's why we need to rethink how we, associate with all the nations, because it is a competitive world after all. No one wants you to take his position. You can see even in Nigeria, in Africa, when we talk of Nigeria as the leading economy, we are competing with South Africa, and South Africa is getting a great deal of its, records of economic advancement from Nigeria, which is leading companies. So I think this is a rethink which Nigerians have to bear in mind, so that we have that patriotism to enable us collectively as a nation compete with other nations. That is what is lost in Nigeria. We are individuals. We don't think as a nation to compete. Sorry to say, because it's not just about government, it's about us all.
So is federalism the most suitable principle for ensuring nation building in a country like Nigeria?
In my opinion, absolutely yes. Federalism is the best, I think, for Nigeria. And it has been since the times of the colonial masters, because even the colonial masters who are ruling by the gun with absolute power could not run Nigeria as a unitary system. That's why they have different for the North, what they have may be different from the South. So it has always been like that. And I think federalism would be better suited for Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Kalgo, before I let you go tonight, with President Tinubu's administration's demonstrable capacity to bite the bullet, look at the implementation of the Omosaye reports. This was something the president conceded. Mr. President slashed the number of his entourage on foreign and domestic travels. He merged some MDAs as part of the recommendation of that report. But some Nigerians say the president has not done enough. What more can government do to bring about more structural, effective and enduring response to the fiscal recklessness in governance rather?
Heavily, so that we should have that, because with that consciousness will come to us, because now you find people not minding. Because let me give you one example about the issue of subsidy. When we have a subsidy regime, most of the oil of this country is ending in our neighboring countries. And when our borders are very porous, we are not using Lagos, other countries, are collecting revenue for the cars we import. And nobody gives a damn, nobody cares, no Nigerian cares. Now, when we lost the subsidy, now we are realizing that, so we have now are facing a lot of issues. And the monies that are used for the subsidy, I think Nigerians were able to agree that the subsidy will be removed because this government campaign that is a very corrupt regime. So I think we have to address the Nigerian mind, the Nigerian psyche, so that they will be behind the government to understand what the government is doing, so that even if there are pains, and enjoy them.
All right, so quickly, I want to talk about federal character principle, which, historically guarantees a sense of national integration and inclusiveness. How has the president fared so far?
There is a lot of questions about the issue of federal character. I don't have the numbers, but I have heard a lot of commentators have spoken. The issue of federal character, I think, is one that is very essential as it is, but there is no strong mechanism to foster it. But I believe every politician, to be a very good politician, should have a way of blending a very balanced federal character, because after all, all sections of this country are looking to see how things fare about. So initially, without the clear numbers, I cannot speak I cannot assess this government in that terms.
All right, then. Thank you so much for finding time to join us tonight. Mr. Umar Aminu Kalgo is a lawyer and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for speaking with us, for always speaking with us on critical national issues. Thank you so much for your time. Please have a great week.
My pleasure.
And thank you very much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of our resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at 12:30 a.m. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke. We're using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News NG. I am Olajumoke. Good night, everyone.